Yo, what is up, guys? Wasted all my memes here with the strength stacking Reave Juggernaut build showcase and breakdown. This is my favorite build in Path of Exile. We have 300 million plus DPS, 300,000 plus effective HP, the ability to farm all content in the base game really comfortably. The build cannot do some of the harder Valdo map mods right now, but with another 5 to 8 mirrors into the build, I hope to be able to do that kind of content. And I'll be sure to post that on YouTube when I, pursue it later this week. The footage in the background right now is an 8 mod Uber Searing Exarch and an 8 mod Uber Eater of Worlds. Both invitations are corrupted. If I was farming these bosses for speed, I would equip a Bottled Faith instead of Progenesis in order to avoid having to deal with any phases. But for the sake of the video, I thought that it would be cool to show that this build is extremely tanky. We can eat meatballs, we can take a hit, and the POB numbers are not inflated. The build I discovered on YouTube. The YouTuber Port made a build showcase of his strength stacking Reave Juggernaut, the POB of which I loosely followed, as well as a couple other POBs off of Ninja. I will link his video in a comment below, so shout out to him for putting this build out there, because there's not a lot of stuff on YouTube about this archetype of strength stacking Reave, and to me it's the best build in PoE. I love this build. It's amazing, and I highly recommend it to anyone. It makes melee feel so insanely good. We're going to move into a POB section where I'm going to sort of go through all the elements of the build as I understand them in a second. I just wanted to say before that this is a pretty expensive build. It kind of does everything, and that costs currency to do. It's also a very popular archetype. Of course, not everybody's playing Juggernaut, not everybody's playing Reave, but strength stacking items are in general pretty expensive because people want them. They're in demand. So if you're looking to get into this build, spoiler, it's going to take 3 to 4 mirrors probably to get to this point. What is up, guys? We're over to the POB. I wanted to show the configuration. First of all, obviously the POB is going to be linked in a comment below. But I want to show that I'm not using any wither stacks in my configuration, and we do apply withered on hit. We have a lot of attack speed, so this is probably a little bit more of an accurate DPS number when you're fighting a boss. But for the sake of not like seeming sensationalist, we're going to keep the withered stacks off while going through this. I want to say that I unchecked. Yeah, so I unchecked Vaal Ancestral Warchief here. My Molten Shell is on in this config, but I use Molten Shell without cast when damage taken. I'm a manual Molten Shell person, so when I'm about to take a big hit, my Molten Shell is up. I don't think it's really abusive. If you want, obviously you can go in the POB and fiddle. You lose about a third of your tankiness without your multi-shell. And if you're going to take a huge hit, you definitely want to have this up. So I don't recommend using cast with damage taken. I took cast with damage taken off my Molten Shell, and all of a sudden I stopped dying in Uber bosses. The ability to just have your guard skull on command is super underrated, and I'm probably going to make an entire video just about that. But those things about the configuration aside, we can go to the tree. Most strength stackers that are marauders, their tree is going to look very similar to the skeleton, because you really do want 3 large cluster jewels, and you really do want your lethal pride in this, this spot. You want basically a lot of these nodes are going to be identical to other strength stacking builds. Excuse me. So if you're, if you want to do a different variant, or if you're playing Berserker, you should go on Ninja and find somebody who has maybe a more specialized tree. I can just super quick try and go through this as I understand it. Again, I'm a relatively new player. This is my 3rd league, and if I make any mistakes here, I apologize. If you're a more experienced player, this information is probably not relevant to you. If you're somebody who's just like new to strength stacking in general and like wants to get a basic understanding of it, and just go through the specific items in a build like this, because it is kind of like a set. I know people hate that word in other ARPGs, set bonuses, but the way that the uniques in strength stacking builds are put together, it kind of does feel like a set. You do kind of need every piece, and every piece plays off of every other piece, and you ramp yourself to such incredible damage by using synergies. So you really don't want to try and skip anything in the build, which is the reason that it becomes so expensive. So all that said, you're using spell damage clusters with 12 passives. Mine are not very good, to be honest. I have some pretty jank ones. I'm working on a project right now to make better ones, but until then, this is what I've got. The key roles here are all attributes, strength, and increased effect. If you get a really GG cluster jewel, you're probably either getting a % damage or maximum life for your 4th affix. Mine are pretty mid, but they do the job. I mean, you can see this build is incredibly strong even without perfect clusters. We have Emperor's Might and Emperor's Mastery for % attributes and % strength. These jewels are pretty expensive this league because Lab is not very popular, so there are substitutes for these. I mean, you can use regular jewels. You're not really going to lose a ton if you replace this with a regular jewel with a lot of good rolls on it, like, crit, multi, strength, life. The build's going to be a little weaker without the unique jewels, but I would not prioritize these immediately if you're switching to this build, especially this league with how expensive they are. I guess they could have gone down. I haven't actually looked in a couple days, so full disclosure there. So strength stackers scale their damage by using these spell damage clusters. Iron Will, that allows strength damage bonus to apply to spell damage as well, and Battle Mage's Cry. So Battle Mage's Cry applies your spell damage to your attacks at a value of up to 150%. When that value is based on Warcry power. Just to run down the full mechanics of the build, jump around a little bit here, but Red Blade Banner gives our Warcries infinite power, so our Battle Mage's Cry is always applying its maximum buff effect. Battle Mage's Cry is on left click. It's always going off. It's always giving us an absolute insane amount of damage. We turn this off. You can see we lose 260 million damage. You need Battle Mage's Cry on. You need Call to Arms to have it be instant. And these 4 nodes are worth about 50 million damage in Warcry buff effect. The GG helmet that I do not have, a mirror tier helmet, would have Warcry buff effect as well. All right, so that was a big jump around, but that's basically how you scale damage as a strength stacker. It doesn't really matter what skill you're using. You're always going to double dip your strength bonus to spell damage and use Battle Mage's Cry to turn that spell damage into attack damage. That's kind of how all these builds function. Regardless of skill. So the changes that I've made to the build from the POBs that I looked at is I'm taking some life masteries, 50 maximum life here, and 15% increased max life. Our chestplate for these builds does not have a life modifier, so it's just some free life. I also have slipped in a vitality onto the build for some regen. Most of these builds have almost no regen. And to me, when I'm doing most content, I like to have regen. If I was just trying to burst uber bosses, I probably don't need vitality. I probably don't need progenesis. And there's another spec for that, but it's really not a complicated change. You're basically just throwing in a war banner for vitality and throwing on bottled faith for progenesis, increasing your damage by an enormous amount and insta-killing those ubers. So other jewels in the build, this league we get to use Flame's Advance for a bunch of extra strength. Usually, I mentioned in the showcase part of the video that generally you need to use Forbidden Flesh and Flame to get your rage sustained, but because of charms and that which was taken, giving us Warcry rage, we're kind of chilling, and it makes the Juggernaut variant super, super strong. You always anoint Panopticon when you're playing a melee build. I'm sorry, I did not make the world this way. This is grinding your games. You need your totems. If you were to turn your totem off, you'd feel really, really sad. Don't turn your totems off. Always have your totems on. It's very important when you're playing melee. I know, it's just the way it is. These 2 points are critical. It looks sort of janky, but this is literally all of our leech. If you look here, I'd lose 4,450 life leech. And 479 mana leech, and those are the exact numbers that we have. Because we do so much damage, this one node is just like giving us an insane amount of sustain. And there's not really a better way to get this on the build than at 2 points on the passive tree that I'm aware of. If anybody knows, let me know. Over here we have our split personalities with strength and accuracy rating. Strength stackers, most of the time that are playing Marauder, I should say, I mean, you want to also stack accuracy rating. If you're playing Berserker, the Forbidden Flame and Flesh jewels for this Ascendancy node are, you can't skip them. Playing Juggernaut saves you a lot of currency because undeniable Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flames are very expensive. Full disclosure, the Berserker version of this build has about double the damage, maybe even more. But you're kind of limited in the content you can do because you're much, 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 much squishier. The Juggernaut version is so tanky, as you probably saw in the showcase. And that, to me, is worth losing some damage, especially when you can still pretty much comfortably do everything in the game. So that's basically a quick rundown on the tree. Obviously, not going super in depth. I guess one other important node to mention is you really do need this. Scaling your armor with your strength is super critical. We need a way to get more armor on the build because it's a very tight build. You don't have a lot of room to fiddle around. So getting this is a absolutely essential point to increase your defense. So quick over to skills. Right now I have my vitality linked up to arrogance. This is costing me a little bit of max life. You can see my unreserved life is, I'm definitely reserving a good amount of life. To me, this regen is absolutely worth it. Up to you. If you were trying to go for damage, you could throw a war banner in here for the accuracy. If you were trying to, map really fast, you could just take this vitality out for a portal gem or something. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility here. Precision is a must-have with arrogance because this is boosting our damage a lot with the flat accuracy and crit chance. Here are our totems. You need to have them, I know. Blood and Sand, Determination, and Purity of Elements are our primary auras. Blood and Sand, Reave scales really well with area damage because it's got a big area. Not really very complicated there. Purity of Elements is just amazing. We don't need a damage aura. Ailment Immunity is incredible quality of life. This caps our resists. And Determination is just, our best defensive combination here. It also helps us get crit immunity with a Corruption on our armor and a Watcher's Eye mod. We can become immune to crits, which is also incredible. Battle Mage's Cry, Molten Shell, and Blood Rage. Blood Rage is just a ton of attack speed, which in this build translates to speed because you use Leap Slam to move around. So you're crazy fast when you have Blood Rage on. Berserk, one of the best skills in the game. You have to have Rage Sustain, and you have to use Berserk. I mean, Berserk is just too good. The damage reduction and damage added, the speed, it's insane. Incredible skill. Our Curse is Assassin's Mark. We do use Mark on hit because we just want it applied to every enemy we're fighting. Life Tap to negate the mana cost because our mana pool is pretty pinched. A Leap Slam to get around. Vaal Reave here in the main damage links, increase critical damage, Awaken Multi-Strike, Pulverize, Void Motivation, and Volatility. Volatility, some people have had questions about volatility. It really synergizes well with the damage roll on our weapon, as well as Replica Alberon's 1 to 80 damage per 80 strength, which we'll go over in the items in a second. Volatility is just like a ton of value. It's an absolute ton of damage. It's pretty crazy. So our items here, this is a mirrored foil Cataclysm Bite. It might not be the best in slot for Original Sin Strength stacking Reave as of the making of this video. I haven't looked since I mirrored it. But it's an amazing weapon. The only flaw on this weapon is the tier 2 increased attack speed implicit. Robin, a strength stacking Reave enthusiast, a friend of mine, wants to spend all of the currency that either of us make in the entire league to get that last 4% IAS on another base and basically create a best in slot mirrored foil for strength stack Reave. So that's a project we're maybe pending. Shout out to Robin. It feels kind of insane, but at the same time, the 4% does kind of, tickle a little bit when you look at it. You're like, why isn't it 8? Why isn't it 8? But the amazing weapon, you can mirror this from Shaz. He posts on TFT. I think the mirror fee is 80 divines. It's not in the TFT shop. In mirror services, the mirror services thread is where this is posted. TFT has a chaos damage foil that is, I think, only about 1% worse than this one for Original Sin. So whatever piques your fancy. My helmet, the most important thing on the helmet for the build is the elevated Warlord mod, 1% increased critical strike chance per 10 strength and gain accuracy rating equal to your strength. Scaling accuracy scales our speed. It's super important. And this mod is just amazing. My helmet's pretty good, but it definitely could be better. There's other mods on here. Warcry buff effect. My strength roll isn't maxed. I don't have tier 1 life, stuff like that. Iron Fortress, mine has a reasonably low strength roll, but I got this for really cheap, and it had the reduced extra damage from critical strikes, which to me was super important because I don't like getting crit. This is just the armor that you use. This would be what I would consider a set piece because it increases your strength damage bonus that you're scaling. These gloves are pretty simple, probably the cheapest item in the build. Not hard to make these, not expensive to buy them, especially if you buy them without the Eldritch Implicits and roll them yourself. You see here, you're really just getting damage out of these and some life, percent armor, but they're not super complicated. I could probably have a better crafted prefix for damage. I'm honestly just kind of lazy because I was thinking I would probably, if I was going to work on these gloves, I would re-roll the Eldritch implicits. Replica Albrons, just a ridiculous item. They're pretty cheap this league. One of the cheaper sort of GG items in the build. Really, really incredible. Scale your damage to the moon, and because we're using Original Sin, the cannot deal non-chaos damage is really not a big deal. Corpse Rate, this is a Simplex Amulet. There actually is a better mirrored amulet than this available that has percent attributes instead of flat strength. It's about 1% to 2% better. I got this, I think, either before I don't know. I bought this for a mirror. That seemed like a good deal to me. I could have, I guess, gotten a 2% better upgrade. I'm not really too upset about it. But yeah, the Simplex Amulets are amazing. I love Affliction. It's awesome. Original Sin, more expensive even than when I bought it. Original Sin seems to keep climbing in price. We are working on a project again with Robin, a Strength Stack Reave enthusiast. We're going to work on a project for different level of investment POBs. So look for that in the future. If you're still watching at this point in the video, you want to play this build and it just seems way too outlandishly expensive, we are working on a project for that coming later this league. And also we're going to be making some pretty ambitious guides to try and set up so you can basically league start straight into a budget Strength Stack Reave setup. So look forward for that stuff. Obviously, if you're super interested in it, let me know with the comments and we can, get a move on it. If nobody's really looking for it, it'll probably come out at a little bit of a slower pace. You know what I'm saying? But if people are asking for budget POBs or leveling POBs, then we'd be more inclined to push this out. This ring, it's just filling a slot. I mean, it's a good ring, but I would like to have Chaos res instead of all elemental res. My Chaos is only capped because progenesis is clicked on. So when progenesis is not clicked on, my Chaos res is not capped. Progenesis is not on all the time, so I would like to have a tier 1 Chaos res roll here to stay capped. Obviously, a mirror ring would be the best, and I think the mirror ring. There's a really good mirror ring on TFT this league that's like 60 million more damage or something. So I mean, we'll see where my currency has to go. If I'm going to do a mirror craft, I'm probably not going to buy a mirror ring here, but we'll see what happens. Mageblood, it's a good league to go after Mageblood, guys. I know that this is one of the cheaper items on this build. As insane as that is to say, Mageblood's below 200 div. If you farm Essence hard, if you grind Essence hard for 16 hours, maybe over a weekend or something, you can probably afford a Mageblood. So, if you've never had a Mageblood, you want to try it, Affliction is the league to do so. Our flasks, basically we're getting an absolute insane amount of damage reduction by using 3 elemental flasks with Instilling Orbs, increased effect, and Mageblood. We have our Onslaught permanently up with reduced mana cost of skills, which is really important through Mageblood. Progenesis, I already touched on it for a second, but I don't know who made this item. I heard somebody told me this was a player-made item. This is the most disgusting item in PoE as far as I'm concerned. It's giving me 100,000 effective HP by itself. It's a flask that basically automates. It's insane. Progenesis is insane. It's kind of expensive this league because Magic Find builds really need the tankiness, and I don't blame them. This is an amazing item. So that about wraps up everything in the build. Again, not really a guide, guys. More just like a breakdown. If you're looking for a more step-by-step guide-like content, let me know. I can definitely try and put it together. And I really appreciate you guys watching, and I hope that you give the build a try in some iteration. Again, explore PoE Ninja, explore YouTube. I'm sure you'll find other people making content for these archetypes that you can, you can put together your own version, or maybe cut some corners and put together one that's a lot cheaper. I will say that the build is fine without Original Sin. You can play it without Original Sin. You change a lot of things in the build around, but you can play it without Original Sin. You don't need it. Oh, I should do charms. The charms real quick. We're getting our Fortify on hit and Wither here. This is a lot of value. I was actually doing some calcs, and I think I need about 10% more chance to inflict Wither somewhere, so I might respec by that which was taken. Although that which was taken that our first strength stackers are insanely expensive, so that might not be on the table. And here we have these are really cheap charms, by the way. If you don't get a perfect roll on percent increased strength, I want to say I paid like 5 div to 8 div for these. Incredible value. Instant leech is amazing for staying alive, and it's just fantastic. So yeah, I think that about wraps it up. I might find something else that I want to talk about here before we close. But again, as always, I really appreciate your guys' feedback. I've really been enjoying making content. It's been a week on YouTube as of today, and it's been really fun. Everybody who's coming to the stream has been like super cool. I've been loving talking with you guys and starting projects and learning more about the game. So again, just thanks for all your feedback, and I really hope you guys have a good day and many lucky drops to you.